Welcome to CHEP Insurance Talk, an interview about risk and safety. This time we will talk about cars, autonomous driving and its future. But not only. Let me welcome here the managing director at the BMW Group Czech Republic, Macieje Galanta. Welcome.
Welcome.
Good morning. How does a marine engineering graduate get into automotive industry?
It was not just straightforward, I would say, path. It was very curvy, starting from a sea exactly and moving to the different industry on the lands. And I've been working all the time in the sales and marketing departments of many international companies as well. Because after 3 years spending on the sea, I decided the sea is really great, but for the fish, not for the man, right? And I moved directly to Shell Gas, and I was building up a big LPG network of sales. Then I was doing that for British Petroleum. Then I moved to bank, but also retail banking, so everything about the customers and about the marketing, and finally to BMW, where I'm also running exactly this part of the job. And since cars have always been my dreams and really great thing, especially BMW, I accepted the offer immediately.
So I guess you like driving.
I love driving. I love vehicles. I love also, since I'm engineer, I love techniques and all the engineering stuff about the vehicles. But the most, what I love about cars, and especially BMW, is the joy of driving. So that's what those products are really giving to the consumers, to the customers. I mean, there is nothing actually great about the banking sector except for the profit or sometimes loss, you get it, but you never enjoying actually buying product. So here, if you buy the BMW product, you are already having a smile on the face the whole time.
I can understand that feeling. Yes, I also like driving. But isn't it a pity that we are heading towards autonomous driving?
Well, I don't think so. It's a really great feature. I mean, driving is fantastic, but also being safer on the driving and having some, especially on the long journeys, some time to think or to whatever, not be focused 100% on the road. This could be really a great feature as well. And already currently our cars are equipped with a function level 2 systems. It's not autonomous driving system, but it's, we call it, it's
I think it's we are legs off or
no,
hands off.
It's like a hands off for the couple of seconds, 15 seconds. No, but this is assistant, driving assistant, and allows you to even overtake cars or shifting, let's say, moving from one line to another line, indicating by the indicator like to do this, do so, and the car moves it autonomously currently. So to be honest, I use this on the highways all the time, the systems, and many our customers are enjoying this as well. So it's absolutely great. For instance, parking autonomously, it's a fantastic feature because you never know whether your car or the slot on the parking is big enough that you can fit your car. And then if you push the button, the car tells you, yes, this is the right one, and I can park. And it parks autonomously. It's super.
I can imagine that it's comfortable.
It's very comfortable.
So what technology or safety features are now becoming standard in the car with the continuation towards autonomous driving?
I mean, standard, it's not like our cars are equipped with a standard autonomous drive feature. So you can have different options in a car which you buy, of course. But this top technology, which currently we're developing, it goes into direction even for autonomous on a certain highways. So we got approved by the authorities in Germany, finally, for the new generation of the 5 Series, which is coming in autumn this year. We have approval for the full autonomous driving system up to 130 kilometers on a specific highways, which are certified. So that means car can go autonomously with the hands off the whole time. But that doesn't mean that you have to take your eyes off the road. It's simply you're still responsible fully how the car is behaving. But it can go more than 15 seconds autonomously without the touching steering wheel. That means continuously you can have a hands off the steering wheel.
But does it mean that we will not need only special certified cars, but also highways?
Yes.
We will need there.
Because on the normal roads, just imagine traffic in a city. You have pedestrians, dogs, cats, kids, mother with the carts, all the people walking, different vehicles on the road, even those which remember good 1950 years, sometimes on the road which are completely not autonomous without any features, and the drivers could be also not with sharpest eyes. So it's very difficult to make it in a city. But on the highways where you have a really restriction of the traffic, so there's no bikes, no small move vehicles up to field. So you have to drive certain speed. There are no animals because the barriers are set up on the side, and also what is important, these highways must be equipped with at least 5G transmission, because car must communicate all the time with a server, and cars which are going on that highway are communicated each other through the server. So gets an information. For instance, if there is a hole on the road, on a kilometer, whatever, 15.2, and one car just spotted that there is a hole on the road, or maybe there's somebody on the side of the road, immediately the server gets this information and spread it to all the vehicles which are driving. And the cars which are going to pass it, they know it ready and prepare for that. So that's...
connected highway.
It's completely connected. And there's also other monitoring systems on those highways required that enable exactly this autonomous driving. Because autonomous driving is nothing else like a number of information the whole time, giving and transmitting and also transform into the brain of a vehicle for the certain movements. That's it. Yeah.
And is that what you are testing on the newly opened polygon in Sokolov?
We are testing many things there, but also behavior on a certain situations. For instance, side traffic comes on a junction, unpredictable, and the car must stop. So these systems we are testing there as well. We are going to test there a lot of more situations. And also this polygon is meant to be a testing ground exactly to go for level 3, level 4, level 5 in the future, and full autonomous, of course, for all the countries around the world. Because signs, for instance, in Germany, they're a little bit different than the ones which are in France. So, but you have to adjust everything to the country you would like to make a certification. Japan, different signs, different side of a road, different regulations, different in China. So it's going to be this is a worldwide project for all the countries in the world. And we're going to test all those elements step by step for each country itself on a different type of roads and different situations. So I think this is I would say a trigger for us to go in much faster development of autonomous driving than ever before. Without this, we wouldn't be able to simply do it, because you cannot test it on a regular road, every situation. Yeah, you may even test with different weather. Absolutely. This also makes a difference, actually, for the car. Same like for the human. If it's rainy, you behave differently than when it's sunshine, right? So that was very important milestone for BMW to open up. Actually, the opening was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's very, very new. But it's a huge area. So how far, from your point of view, are we from the autonomous driving as such? As I said, we can test all the systems, and I think more or less they're going to work soon.
So on that polygon, there are cars
which potentially could do all the laps autonomously and goes to the garage, no problem.
Okay.
Because it's a closed area, and I don't think there's any problem to do so already now. But to do it safely on the roads, that's a different story, right? And I said we need to have at least 5G transmission, air transmission, or more. That would be better, even more. And we need to have a common system for all the cars which are autonomous driving, the same platform, let's say, for exchanging the data. And I think we are not there with these regulations yet. So in the States, for instance, it's more developed. Our cars already driving more or less autonomously on their roads for already two years. And this is a 7 Series, for instance, which has this feature. And we got only approval for 5 Series, new generation, which is coming autumn for Germany only, and for only limited highways. Exactly. So this is all depending how the European Union and other countries are developing infrastructure as well.
So where do you see the biggest, I call it challenge, but probably now it is barrier, on the way to autonomous driving?
I think so that the regulations, first of all, preparation of the roads. I mean, how many free-line highways we have in Czech Republic? Maybe a few kilometers, right? There are, but I remember there are, but it requires also free-line highways to do so, and also digital signs on those highways, which can change, of course, the speed limits on a certain, depending on the traffic as well. And I think we are not there in terms of infrastructure yet in most of the countries in Europe. And this will going to take some time. And I'm saying the mild version of autonomous driving is going to be allowed, definitely in a certain, but full autonomous, it's a really song of the future.
Will there always be the possibility to overtake the driving by the driver?
So far, it is compulsory. And for the future, I think the work's going in the direction no driver in a car, but it means we go like in a train. So we sit in a car and it goes straight, and all the cars must go follow the same way. Then it's autonomous. As I said, it must be the certain certified highways, and maybe only highways, only for the, or maybe line only devoted directly for autonomous cars. Could be like this. And then you can do it in a safe way.
And if we could say, how far are we from a mass production of cars like that? Is that in tens of years, or?
No, I mean, this is definitely growing faster than tens of years. I mean, we are improving our systems from model to model. It's, for instance, 5 Series, which is coming a year after the 7 Series. It's already enhanced and advanced, more advanced than the 7 Series. It's only 1 year behind, and the new model is going to bring another feature into the vehicle. Currently, for instance, in Czech Republic, if you drive 7 Series or X7, you have an automatic speed adjustment to the speed limit, so you don't have to even change the speed limits using this system, which was not available for another vehicles, the previous generation 5 Series. Now it's available already. So every model is coming with a new feature, and I don't think we need to have a tens of years to do so, rather couple of years to come from level 2 to level 3. But there's no clear answer when. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, not easy, because it's not dependent only on the manufacturer of the cars or the technology.
Exactly. If you ask me about if the whole nations are going to drive electric, I will not tell you when exactly, because that's depending on local authorities, providers of electricity, source of electricity, infrastructure for charging. This all have to grow, I would say, parallel to products which we are developing.
When you've mentioned the electric cars, what are your predictions for the sales of electric cars in Europe, but specifically in Czech Republic? Because we are more difficult in the...
Yeah, I mean, yes, still 6 and 8 cylinders, it's on top of the head of the drivers here in this country. You can see it on the road.
And I'm still not comparing it to China, but we'll probably get there.
Yeah, I mean, currently I think the total number in this particular year, the total segment of electric cars in Czech Republic is 1.5% of the total volume, right? So it's just nothing. There are some manufacturers which only produce electric cars, and they are pretty successful in Czech Republic. And they are growing with thousands of a percent this year comparing to the previous years, but previous years they didn't sell anything. We are growing significantly, to be honest. In this year we are growing with electric cars with a 60% growth. And that is something what we are going to continue for the next years as well. Probably next year we're going to reach in between 12 to 20% share of our annual sales only through the electric cars. And I think this is a very great result. We are also expecting that maybe there's coming some subsidy from a government, and this will boost up definitely electrical sale. Because if you look purely on the cost of driving, electric cars are way cheaper driving than combustion engines. It's minimum 50%. You can even reduce it by 80% if you have your own photovoltaic panel, by 100%. Right? So you can completely drive without any surcharge for the kilometers, which on a petrol cars you always have to spend. Right? You don't have your own refinery, right? so the oil. So that's why here there's a lot of more potential for saving. And I think cost of a total ownership of a car, electric car, is very much lower or much lower than internal combustion engine. And this should trigger as well some sentiment of the consumers. Our cars already with a range of 600 kilometers, 650 kilometers. So we can go to Ostrava and back to Prague almost with one charging. There are some very nice chargers, full power chargers on the highway. In 10 minutes, you can charge 50% of your battery, so another 300 kilometers. So that's already different than 5 years ago. And it's with a range gives you a lot of more freedom as well. So we're also enhancing this electrical cars technology from model to model.
It's improving very quickly, and I think it still needs to get to the minds of the people. But it will get there eventually, I guess.
Yes.
By the way, how do you see the development? Like Chinese companies are, I would say, well ahead because there are huge sales in China and they are also quickly entering the European market. Is it dangerous for the automotive industry as such in Europe?
I mean, Chinese market, yes, they produce a lot of its own vehicles, not only European production, which sits in China. So for the first time ever, the Chinese manufacturer sells more cars in China than Volkswagen Group. Mm-hmm. So Volkswagen Group becomes number 2 on the Chinese market, and the Chinese manufacturer is number 1. And purely because of the electric cars. So this goes, but don't forget, China stands for altogether 38 million cars a year. So this is really a lot of vehicles. And primarily most of them are still combustion engines, not full electrical cars. Of course, those producers are moving to the different parts of the world, also into Europe. And we see already few countries where they are selling its own products. Definitely they are going to go to the rest of Europe if they have only enough capacity in the production plants. Actually, what they do everything in a digital way. So they sell through the digital channels only, which has some limitations. But of course, their products are more designed to exactly sell it through this particular channel. We need like a variety of options, availability of options. It's limited simply to few of them you can choose. You simply order the car like it looks.
How do you see the future of online sales of BMWs, Minis, Rolls Royces? I can't imagine I would buy a Rolls Royce online. Well, I can't imagine I would buy a Rolls Royce, but you have the plan. You have the plan of selling at least 25% of new cars using an online system in 2025.
Yes.
Well, not in Czech Republic probably, but
no. It's absolutely it's an ongoing trend also for BMW. So our privilege is that we have a very well built network of our dealers all around the world, and we simply develop omni-channel sales. It's not like we are going to focus purely on digital sales. No, it's wrong. We are going to use primarily our dealer network to promote our vehicles and enable customers to test them, because hardly any vehicle is sold without the test drive. It must be tested. Customers sit in a car, must see how it looks like, how he feels in a vehicle, and that's a sentiment of our customers and privilege that we still have it. And we're still building a lot of more complicated vehicles than our, I would say, Chinese competitors. And we provide a way bigger number of options for choice, like a number of rims or upholsteries or colors, even maybe individual colors, which is a palette of 1 million colors. And you still can have it. And without really touching it, it's difficult to choose. We are going to have a Neue Klasse 2025. It's a completely new vehicle, new, I would say, platform for vehicles, fully digital, electric, and of course, sustainable and circular. And this vehicle is going to be much way going into reduction of the complexity. And this car could be subject for higher share of digital sales or e-commerce sales. And I think this is going to boost significantly digital sales in that segment. But 7 Series, wow, I don't think so.
No way.
I don't think so.
I can
Unless you're buying the second one the same like you have it already home.
Well, that's a different story.
Yeah.
We could still talk a lot about the circularity and so on, but we don't have time for that. So just to close up, how do you imagine you personally, your future driving? How will it look like?
My future driving?
Yes.
Until I can without the roof.
And doesn't matter if it is autonomous, electric or whatever.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Enjoyable.
Enjoyable, absolutely. Of course, joy of driving. That's a synonym of a BMW, and we have a Neue Klasse and any other product also with autonomous. We have to really provide it for our end customers and also for ourselves, because that's what the BMW stands for. We need to provide not only safety but definitely joy of driving.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
And I thank you for following us. You can see more of our interviews, Job Insurance Talk, at the YouTube channel or at your favorite podcast application. Have a nice day.